All right, welcome. Have you ever stopped and wondered, how do scientists actually figure things out? Well, today we're going to do just that. We're going to dive into the secrets of this amazing little spinning seed, and along the way, we'll basically build our own guide to how scientific discovery really works. So take a look at this. This is a mahogany seed. And when it drops from a tree, it doesn't just, fall. It does this incredible spinning dance. It literally turns itself into a tiny organic helicopter. I mean, it is just an absolute marvel of natural engineering. But how does it do that? And maybe even more importantly, how could we figure it out for ourselves? So for this explainer, let's kind of put on our science fair advisor hats. We're going to walk through the entire process, right from that first, that's weird moment all the way to a solid conclusion, step by step. Okay, so here's our game plan. First up, the helicopter from a tree. Then we'll dissect the anatomy of a flying seed. We'll get into the scientists' rules, figure out how to test the flight, and then see what the numbers say. And we'll wrap it all up with nature's ingenious designs. All right, let's jump right in. Every great scientific journey doesn't start with some complicated formula. Nope. It starts with just looking at something and being curious. So this auto-rotation, that's the magic trick. Instead of just plummeting, the spin actually lets the seed hang in the air for longer. And what does that do? It gives the wind more time to grab it and carry it off to find some new fertile ground. It's just a brilliant strategy for survival. Okay, so how does it actually fly? Well, just like any good scientist or engineer would do, the very first step is to figure out what it's made of. So let's break it down. Let's look at the anatomy of this tiny flying machine. So you've got four really critical parts here. First, there's the seed itself. That's the weighted part. Then you have the long wing, which obviously catches the air. There's also this thicker leading edge called the rib, and that gives it structure. And finally, see that slight upward bend? That's called the dihedral angle, and it's all about stability. Now, each one of these parts plays a super important role, as we're about to see. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. How do we go from just, looking at the seed to actually testing it? This is the point where we have to lay down the rules of the game for a proper scientific experiment. All right, rule number one, and this is probably the most important rule for any good science project. You can only change one thing at a time. That one thing is what we call the manipulated variable. So for example, we might ask, what happens if I mess with the wing's rib? Now, to make sure our test is actually fair, everything, and I mean everything else, has got to stay exactly the same. Those are our controlled variables. So for our seed experiment, that means dropping it from the exact same height in a room with no wind every single time. And finally, we've got to measure what happens because of our change, right? That's our result, and we call it the dependent variable. So for us, that's going to be things like how long does the seed actually stay in the air, its hang time, and what does its spin look like? So check this out. This cable just lays it all out perfectly. Our plan is to manipulate the rib. We're going to control the drop height and the air conditions, and what we measure is the hang time. See? This kind of structure, this is what turns simple curiosity into actual, real science. Okay, but now we've hit a snag, a practical problem that pretty much every scientist runs into. You can't just ask a mahogany seed to grow a shorter wing for your experiment, can you? Real-world stuff is messy, so what do? We build a model. It's a classic move. A model basically simplifies a really complex system so we can zero in on and test the specific things we care about. So instead of trying to mess with a real seed, we can just make paper versions where we have total control over everything. And the great thing is, a model doesn't have to be super complicated. The source materials actually show this brilliant, simple method using just one piece of paper and a few easy folds. It makes the science totally hands-on and something that really anyone can try. Okay, so our experimental design is all set. We've built our paper models. Now comes the really exciting part. It's time to collect some data and see what the numbers actually tell us. So this leads to a classic scientific question, a clear hypothesis that we can finally test. Does a bigger wing mean a faster spin? Your gut might tell you, yeah, of course, a bigger wing would spin faster. But let's not guess. Let's see what the data actually says. And wow, the results from these experiments are crystal clear, and maybe a little surprising. As you can see right here on the chart,
The longer the wing, the slower it rotates. So it turns out the goal isn't a crazy fast spin at all. It's a slow, stable, and controlled fall.
And get this isn't just some weird thing with the paper models. A university thesis went and measured actual mahogany seeds and found their average steady rotation speed was a blistering 805 RPM. This just confirms the whole idea. It's all about a highly controlled, stable spin that's designed to maximize hang time. And that same university study, it backed up all the major findings. Heavier seeds, they fall faster. Longer and wider wings, both of them slow the rotation down. But what's really cool is how resilient the design is. Even a seed that's a bit damaged can often still fly just fine. So, okay, we've collected our data, we've seen the results, but the final and maybe the most crucial step is to ask why. Why did nature end up with this specific design? And this is where our little seed experiment connects to the huge world of human engineering. Hey, remember that slight upward bend we talked about on the seed's wing? The dihedral angle? Well, now take a look at an airplane. Engineers use the exact same feature for the exact same reason. Whether you're a seed or a 747, that angle gives you crucial flight stability. It is the perfect example of engineers borrowing a genius idea from nature. You know, this powerful idea actually has a name. It's called biomimicry, and one of our sources puts it perfectly. The structures of animals and plants often become a reference for human development of precision instruments. I mean, think about it. Nature's solutions have been tested and perfected over millions of years. They're basically a blueprint for our own technology. And that really brings us full circle, doesn't it? This whole process, observe, ask a question, make a hypothesis, control your variables, and then test it, that's not just something for a lab or a science fair. It's a really powerful way of looking at the world around you. It's how you turn simple curiosity into real understanding.